Hi, welcome to Hey Parents, Let's Chat.com. I am Jess Hunt, and we're trying to grow a community of parents who can be sharing ideas and learning from each other. I feel like the more we share, the more we learn, and then the better we become as parents, which is really our ultimate goal, right? Um, this is a place where we're going to be networking and sharing ideas and wisdom and experiences in a very kind and respectful way. And for today's chat, we are going to focus on education. And so I am thinking that there are a lot of parents at varying stages of their parenting journey that are going to benefit from this conversation. Um, there are parents who might have their children in preschool or about to head into kindergarten and wondering, um, private school, public school, homeschool, what is the best choice for their family. There might be parents who have their children already in the school age years and are transitioning to the middle school, and what is the best option? Should they switch from public to private, private to public, homeschooling to public? There's a lot of transitions that happen, and um, making the decision about what's best for your child might be changing as they grow, or as things happen in our lives. And you might be transitioning into the high school level where perhaps you were homeschooling and then you wanted your student to finish in a public school and get a diploma from a certain um, private school, public school, whatever. Not that they don't get homeschooling diplomas, it's a little bit different. But it depends on what state you're in as well and what that looks like. But those are varying stages in when education needs to become part of the decision making process as we figure out what is best for our children. Especially now, I feel like there's a lot of controversial things happening right now. We have COVID that we're dealing with. There's a lot of people that are concerned with critical race theory. Then there's the 1619 program, and there's a lot of controversial issues right now happening with education where parents really need to take a step back and think, is this really what's best for my child? Do we need to make a change based on that? So I wanted to open up this conversation and have a chat and learn from varying perspectives. I just want to put this out there for the purposes of full disclosure to the audience. I am a teacher. I teach in our local public school, but I also have experience in the private school. I grew up going to a public school, but then I also went to a private school for middle school and high school. So I have experiences with both, but having said that, I really feel like I have an unbiased perspective. I frankly am fans of education in general. I don't really care how it's done. And so I just wanted to open up the conversation. And I'm thinking that I think of it as categories of homeschooling, public, and then private. And the private includes, like Catholic charter schools, private academies that might be around where you live. And so just jumping right into homeschooling as our first option. I am a fan of homeschooling. Even though I'm a public school teacher, I am a fan of homeschooling with a certain caveat. And I am super opinionated about this. I do feel like if you are going to choose to homeschool your child, you need to do it right. And there are right ways and there are wrong ways. And I have seen the realm of what happens when you do a really good job at homeschooling, or frankly, I'm thinking you need to be reported to the state for neglect. And like those are the two extremes, right? And I've seen what happens with both. I feel like there are some families that think that they're going to homeschool their child and that it's appropriate to just have their children sit in front of a TV while they pop in videos. or CDs. And I'm not talking about video games. I'm talking about like video instructional videos where the child sits in front of the TV and that's their education while their parents are off working. Nope, nope. That is what I would consider neglect. If you are going to choose the homeschooling lifestyle, you really need to commit to that lifestyle. And it needs to be really thoughtful, and you really need to be informed and take an active participating role in your child's education in order for it to be done right, in just my opinion. And I have seen it done beautifully, and where the kids are just amazing. And so it can be done very well or very badly. And so it's just something that I think that parents, if you're going to go down that road, really need to pay attention to doing it the right way, which would be in the best interest of your children. I do think that there are a lot of people that are concerned with, the whole socializing issue. If, you're homeschooling your children are not going to be socialized. I frankly don't buy into that at all. I think that if you're going to commit to that lifestyle, there are so many ways that you can socialize with other homeschooling families. If you're doing it right, you're getting together with other homeschooling families. You're going to the grocery store with your children and they're learning how to wait in line and take turns and communicate with other adults and ask for something at the counter for deli meats or bakery goods, and they're weighing bananas, and if they're buying juice and they need 5 times this price, they're multiplying. I mean, there's so many enriching activities that you can do with your children while homeschooling, and are socializing them at the same time. So that concern to me is an absolute ridiculous concern. Not a valid argument in my mind. So I think that if you're going to choose to homeschool, success is completely dependent on your level of commitment. Having said that, I do think that there are some good reasons and bad reasons for choosing to homeschool. Let me just start with the bad reasons. If you think that you're going to homeschool your child because you can do better than the teachers at your local public school, no, not even buying that. And frankly, that is incredibly insulting and ignorant. Teachers are professionals. Teachers have 4-year degrees, and most often they have advanced degrees because many teachers have their master's degrees. In order to maintain public school teaching certification, you have to be taking a certain amount of classes every so many years. So we are constantly educating ourselves as professionals within our career. We have professional development that by contract we have to participate in. So for people to think that they want to homeschool their child because they can do it better than the teachers, no way. Unless you have that educational background, then sure, absolutely. Absolutely. But if you don't, I frankly find that attitude incredibly arrogant and ignorant. Just putting this out there, keeping it real, people. So I have also heard that, there's people that want to protect their children from all of the big bad things that happen in a public school. No, that's not a valid reason either. There are some wonderful schools within our country doing wonderful, amazing things. And public school children, they are amazing kids within great communities, and there's wonderful things happening. Sure, there might be things that happen in a public school where you might have your child within a class where they're mixed with some kids that are maybe on, the not so kind side. They're just a bad mix of kids. Their chemistry's not great. Some of them don't make great choices. But then they might be in a class where, you know what? Great mix of kids. They're all getting along and doing beautifully. And it kind of just depends on the class your child is assigned to, the group of kids that your kids are growing up with. Your child might also have years where one year they've got a great teacher in the public school, and the next year it's not so great, or one year they're getting along with the teacher, the next year they're not. And these things happen. But to feel like you have to protect your child from all of these bad things that could happen, I don't find that as a good reason at all. Because frankly, if there are things that your child is struggling with in the public school, I frankly think that's a really good time to teach your child to advocate for themselves, to stand up for themselves, and talk to other students, other teachers, about what their needs are, what their wants are. And I think that is just a much more positive approach, rather than feeling like you need to isolate and homeschool because you don't want your child exposed to that. I think that there are so many wonderful schools and amazing teachers with just really great groups of kids out there. And so I don't buy into that as a reason at all. I feel like those are just really bad reasons to want to homeschool. Having said that, I think that there are some really good reasons to choose to homeschool your children. If you have religious reasons, where you have such a very strong religious foundation in your family and you want that to be the basis for your education, a great reason, absolutely. If you really feel like you want to have complete control of what your child is exposed to in terms of the content that they're learning, that's a really another good reason. But I will advise that if you're in that camp, you might want to really do some research and be informed if you're going to be making that decision. Go to your public school and ask them what their public school is teaching for certain content areas. Talk to a teacher. Ask them. I know that anytime a parent's going to come ask me about what I'm teaching in the classroom, I'm very transparent. I'm just going to tell you exactly what's happening, and I'm very honest and open about it because parents deserve that. And I just think that you can just go to your school and ask them. And you might find that what you thought was true actually isn't. So just be informed. Do a little research. It'll be worth it. So, having said that, I do feel like there are ways that if you're going to do homeschooling, if you're going to commit to that lifestyle, there are lots of ways for you to do it correctly. Make sure that you, of course, are informed. We just talked about that. But make sure that if you're going to do it, you're actually willing to commit to that lifestyle. Commit to, having a routine, having a schedule. Not that you have to be rigid. Even in the public school, we have a schedule and a routine, but we're not rigid about it. I think that kids do best when they have structure and they have routines, but there can also be the flexibility where if you're working on a project and you want to continue with it rather than, breaking for snack or whatever, then you continue with that project and, have snack 10 minutes later. Or, even in our classrooms, if my kids are really super focused on a writing project and they're all in a groove for about 30 minutes and we have to break for on something else that we're supposed to be doing, I might chat with my partner teacher and be like, hey, can we let them go another 10 minutes? These guys are like really in a groove. And we make the decision and we do it. And I think that's important for kids to learn flexibility. But I do think that if you're going to commit to the homeschooling lifestyle, you really need to make sure that You're not just chaos and craziness and flying by the seat of your pants, because that is going to be not fabulous for your kids. Because once they get onto the workforce, they have to know how to operate with structure and routine and expectations. And so I feel like you need to model that through your child's education if you're choosing to homeschool. You need to model that within your household so that you're preparing them for that environment in the workforce once they become adults. I also think that it's important that you find a curriculum to follow, knowing that you're following it as a guide, not necessarily rigidly following it. You can supplement and add projects here and there and be flexible with your instruction, but you need to have something to follow. You have to know what it is the kids need to learn. And I also think it's super important that you actually make connections with a teacher. I know in our state, teachers need to actually sign off on homeschooling development. And I know every state has different restrictions, and so it's important to really check your state's guidelines and what is expected for homeschooling. In our state, they're pretty lenient, but they do ask that you have a teacher that you sign off on. But regardless of those requirements, it's just a good practice. You really need to be connected with a teacher so that you can be asking them, are they getting what they need? Are they at the right levels? And it is amazing the amount of information and material that we go throughout the course of a year in public school. And COVID has taught me this. When students go remote, and we went through remote teaching, and it slowed everything down. And I used to think before COVID that we used to waste a lot of time in public school. Frankly, the complete opposite is true, because when you compare like remote learning from home and then you compare into the classroom learning, wow, we cover a vast amount of information throughout the course of a year. It's just absolutely huge. So you really want to touch base with the teacher to make sure that what you're teaching at home is on par with what's expected in the public schools. And I don't really want to place too much emphasis on, for instance, like reading levels and math levels. Like you kind of want to make sure that your kid is at the appropriate reading level. But that is not an indicator of intelligence. But it's super important to pay attention to, because if you've got an 8th grader who's reading chapter books and it's Magic Treehouse, no, you might want to be challenging your 8th grader with more age-appropriate material and try to improve that reading level. Magic Treehouse is fabulous, but really for the elementary levels. And so it's super important to be contacting a teacher just to make sure that you're staying informed. If for some reason you are homeschooling and something happens within your life where you need to change that and enroll your children into public school, you want to make sure that you're keeping your children up to par with their age peers. Because if you enroll them in public school, you want them to be where the other kids are at, not behind, for sure. And sadly, I've seen that happen often, unfortunately. And so it's just super important, and it's super important that you're having a really good teacher that you can connect with to help you through the whole journey, which can be incredibly wonderful. But again, this is a piece of just being informed while you do it. There's also something that's pretty cool if you're going to be homeschooling, and this is a part of that whole being informed piece, is check with your public school, because you might be able to actually like sign out equipment. You might need a microscope, or you might need a certain book, and you can check in with them, sign it out, use it while you're homeschooling, and then return it when you're done. Another thing that a lot of people aren't aware of is that oftentimes you can sign your children up for certain special classes, like art class. Let's say you're not very crafty at home, but your child is super artistic. Well, you can actually enroll your child into the art class, and that way you're still homeschooling, but your kid gets the benefit of going to an actual art class and learning more than what you're probably capable of if you're not crafty. Um, Sports, once you get to the high school level, if your homeschooling child wants to play sports often, you can sign them up. So there's all kinds of ways that while you're homeschooling, you can be doing way more than you would have if you weren't informed of these things. So just be informed as you're doing it. So that's enough about homeschooling. Again, I said I was pretty opinionated about it, and I kind of am. But private schools, I'm also pretty opinionated about. And again, we're talking about private, Catholic, charter, the whole category of it. And I really feel like we have to look at why you're considering the road you want to take. Okay? You really have to consider like your intention. What is your motivation? And again, let's get back to the reasons, right? There could be like really bad reasons for making decisions, and then really good reasons. I think that if you're looking to enroll your child into a private school because that's family tradition, not a good enough reason in my mind. It's interesting for sure, but I really feel like it's more important that you're looking at your individual child's needs as what's most important, not something like family tradition. Your child might not be a fabulous match for the private school that you're looking at just because it's family tradition. And so you really need to look at the individual needs. If you're trying to just keep up with the Joneses because everyone's doing it and it's the popular thing to do, again, not a great reason. You really need to be looking at what's going to be in the best interest of your child as a student in order for them to be educationally successful. Having said that, there are some really good reasons. I think that if your child has specific interests or specific needs that your local public school doesn't offer, but there's a private school that does, absolutely sign them up. Your child might be super interested in an arts program, whether it's drama or a music program that is super strong at a private school, but not super strong at your public school. That's a really good reason. Anytime you're making a decision based on what is in the best interest of your individual child, then you're on the right track. And I do say child because you might have 3 or 4, and all of them are going to be completely different. You really have to look at the individual. I do want to address what I think is a huge misconception when it comes to private schools. And a lot of people just firmly believe that private is always better. And I flat out disagree with that strongly. I don't think it's always better. I believe that there are some people, I'm just going to put it out there, there are some people that are just educational snobs. And they think that no matter what, if your kid goes to a private school, that is better. It's going to guarantee success. Their child is going to go out into the world and be amazing. And that's not always the case. I feel like it really depends on, again, the individual kid and what their individual needs are. You could have a kid, and I've seen this, in a public school who's just floundering. And, okay, we're going to ship them off to the private school. And they're still floundering. Well, that's because they're a flounderer. They haven't, figured out, how to be a student. And so just because you've enrolled them in a private school doesn't guarantee that the problem is going to be fixed. So I really feel like what's more important is that you're looking at the level of engagement that your child has to their education. What is their level of motivation? What is their investment to their education? Um, so I feel like when you're looking at an individual's character and that motivation and that investment, those are strong determining factors on whether they're going to succeed, frankly, whether it's public or private. And so those are just my opinions. I do not think that private school guarantees success at all. I feel like there are kids that go to public schools that do have that strong level of investment. They're engaged, they're super committed, they have high motivation levels, and they do beautifully because they challenge themselves. They take the AP courses. Lots of public schools will offer college classes where if you're at the high school level and you want to challenge yourself, you can take college classes for free often. So look into that, again, being informed. But again, it has nothing to do with private or public. It has to do with your child's level of engagement. And there are kids that could go to a private school and not have those levels of engagement. And they're just not getting the most out of their education because they're not committed to it. They don't have a work ethic. They're not invested. And so, again, they're at a private school setting being offered a great education, but they're not taking advantage of it. So it's really, in my mind, a waste of money if that's the case. Wasting thousands of dollars just so that a parent can have bragging rights and say that my kid goes to so-and-so academy. Well, if your kid is not making the most of it while he's at that academy, you're wasting your money. That's just how I see it. Again, I'm just keeping it real. Like, I'm just giving you my 2 cents. I feel like there are some times when the private school option is the smarter choice. When you have a child that is considering a profession like in the medical field or wants to be a lawyer, say they want to go to Harvard, then it might be in their best interest to graduate from a private academy. But having said that, there are lots of colleges that are looking at not where the kid graduated from, but how they graduated. And I mean that you can have a child that goes to a public school and is getting all A's, is taking AP courses, is taking college classes, and doing beautifully. And the college might have more interest in them rather than a child that goes to a private school, has C's, didn't really challenge themselves, and so they're a little bit less interesting. I mean, colleges are paying attention to that. And that's something that we as parents also have to pay attention to with our high school students as they're getting their educations. So this is just my 2 cents on all of it. Homeschooling, public versus private. I would love to hear your thoughts. Share your thoughts. I have a lot more to share, and I look forward to our next video and follow-up conversations. And in the meantime, if there are any topics that you would like to see discussed, you can go to heyparentsletschat.com and click on the email link, send me your thoughts if there are topics that you would like to see on one of our videos. And if you have found value in our conversations and you've enjoyed them, please hit like, hit share, invite, Share with others. Let everyone know about us so that we can have more joining us, and hopefully we can have more join our conversations. So until next time, I hope that you keep it real. Let's be open minded and let's continue our conversations as we learn from each other and become better parents. Thanks so much for joining us, and I look forward to next time and our chats.